Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Full Throttle Finance, a financial literacy podcast geared towards taking complex financial topics and breaking them down into fun, relatable segments. My name's Felicia. I am your CEO at Clean Me Consulting, and with me is the lovely Allie, who is our senior bookkeeper. Together, we focus on revving up the financial foundations for athletes, entrepreneurs, and leaders in business. Regardless if you're operating from an established program already or if you're just getting started, we're here to help you make small shifts that help drive better financial performance. So this week, I think we're going to dive back into some business chit chat. We hope that you have enjoyed the last 2 episodes that we put together. They kind of recapped our firm's first year in business and all of our metrics over the last year. And today we're going to dive into what happens when your business unfortunately takes a little bit of a backseat. Felicia, as of when we're recording this, has only been back for 5 days. We went to Road Atlanta at the end of April, and it is now the middle of May. And so, she's been traveling this whole time, visiting family, and work has kind of just been interesting. Yeah. And we want to talk about the last couple of weeks and what that kind of looks like whenever some things kind of fall to the wayside a little bit. So last couple of weeks have been a little challenging. There's been a lot of client work. And what did you tell me yesterday? That you haven't touched our own books, our own Clean Bee Consulting books since you left Washington in April.
I know. And to put that in perspective, leading up to Atlanta and every day of running this business before that, I usually touch our bookkeeping every day with the exception of maybe being Saturday, Sunday. I literally have a task in my management system that is to do daily bookkeeping for our firm. And I just keep checking that off without actually doing it for 3 weeks now. But yeah, that's right. And I think that's why we wanted to put this episode together today, is because obviously things happen and sometimes we get in these ebbs and flows of business where some things have to take a backseat. So we wanted to put together a relatable episode for everybody and to hopefully make it feel super relatable for you. I'll give you some cold hard metrics. I'd say in the Hubdoc, which is the receipt management system that we use for our firm, there's over 80 untouched documents in there. Yeah. And they have not been pushed over. Basically, I push them over to our financial report system, QuickBooks. Yeah, we haven't done any of that, which means that there are at least 80 unclassified transactions that are sitting out on our bank feeds between all of our bank accounts and credit card accounts. Plus, I did put some of the larger expenses for this last 2.5 weeks of travel on my personal card, because it was maybe the rental car where it was going to be a chunk of it was business and then a chunk of it was personal. I put all of that on my personal cards. So I got to sift through all of those cards too, calculate what the business portion of those expenses are, get those recorded in the financial report system, and then pay myself back from them from the business account before the next cycle on the credit card hits, because I don't want to pay interest on them, right?
Well, and the hard part is none of it's hard. It's just
you got to do it.
You have to sit down and do it, which is the unfortunate part.
And I just don't have the time. We prioritize our clients and our client work, and I don't want to work 50-hour work weeks. So my stuff takes a backseat, right? That's just how it is right now. And, the month ends, that's going to be a next month problem, and we'll figure it out at that point. But it's really not that big of a deal because we, like we mentioned last episode, we're not flying by the seat of our pants. We're still budgeting. We still know the cash that's coming in and out of the bank. We still have what do you call that? A safety net of workflows, right? That makes sure that when we don't have the capacity, the invoices are still going out to clients so that we can get the revenues to the door and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to put this episode together this week so it feels relatable. And I think that all of those things are definitely relatable as somebody who's an entrepreneur in business. It's okay to fall behind, right? But
And it's not about never falling behind, because you're going to fall behind from time to time, but it's how you handle the falling behind and how you go about prioritizing the important things that are on your plate right now without exhausting yourself, because eventually you will get your feet back on the ground, and you want to make sure that it's not so terrible going through that to get running again. 100%. And when I got back from Atlanta, it was not like when I got back from Tokyo. Felicia was not covering my tasks, and I came back to overdo work, and I got overwhelmed. But Felicia, being the amazing boss that she is and the amazing person that she is very good at outlining what is important and got me straightened out real quick. And I think that's just like a reminder to utilize the resources that I have on hand.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I needed it too. I think we needed each other. So
we did,
which is the value in teamwork, right?
Very true. And Felicia, in our last episode, we talked about how you keep an eye on our finances every month to know what our cash flow is. How did you handle that while not actually looking at our books over the last couple weeks?
Well, even though I wasn't looking at our books, I was looking at our bank accounts and our credit card accounts pretty frequently, I would say, for starters. And to make sure that, like, I wasn't just, like, living in the credit card expenses, right? I did myself a favor and I paid off all of our company's credit card debt ahead of the retreat. And we already had a lot of our expenses paid ahead of time too. That was part of our planning. But I also had spending limits set on the company cards, which we never reached actually throughout the entire travel. We never actually reached those. So I knew that, like, as long as I didn't hit those limits, and as long as I could pop in real quick and, like, check on what those balances were, and as long as they were within what I was expecting, then I knew we were fine, because all of our firm expenses are on auto charge as well too. So, and we have a really good grasp of what our recurring expenses look like. So, you know, another thing that is a tip that I like doing is that I had a separate credit card that we used for our credit card holds and incidentals. Like when you go and you rent a rental car, when you rent a hotel room, a lot of the times they put those holds, those pre-authorizations on your card, instead of it tying up the money that I had allocated for our retreat and for spending and for travel while I was traveling. You know, we had them all on one card so that it wasn't taking away from that money that I had already set aside.
I like that.
To operate on. So that way it's not like, oh my gosh, I've overspent my budget by, you know, $500 or $700, but really it's in holds that are for all these different, you know, moving parts to make the weekend or to make the travel trip work. That's just a little tip that I had. And I thought that it was beneficial while traveling. And then, like, you know, during the travel weeks, I just made sure that we had the payroll funds stashed away for Allison's next payroll. You know, funny, but not funny, but a relatable story on this was, you know, traveling definitely screwed me up. I was in and out of quite a few different time zones for a hot minute, and I actually ended up missing Allison's direct deposit for her payday that was supposed to be happening literally while we were in Atlanta. So I had to get creative with how I got her money to make sure that she was still paid timely, because that's one thing that I'm a big advocate for, is not messing with employees' pay and paydays like that. People plan their lives around that, and you as an employer have an obligation to meet the payroll deadlines that you've set forth. And I wanted to make sure that that did not happen again, because her second payday for last month also happened while I was traveling. So, you know, I actually had an alarm on my phone and a task in our task management system, and I ended up processing it a day early just because I did not want to
make
make that mistake again. Yep, exactly. And then, you know, while I was traveling too, I had a plan that I set ahead of time as to what I needed to do when certain retainer clients' deposits hit our bank account. And that's all part of my profit first method, or like the profit first workflows that we have set up for our firm. So, you know, I drafted our accounts receivable invoices for the firm, like the money that we collect from our clients. I had drafted all of those ahead of time before I started traveling, and I sent them all
I scheduled them to all send out automatically in the beginning of May because I knew that we would be at the track from May 1st through like May 3rd, right? Or like traveling from May 1st to May 4th for Atlanta. So I didn't want to hold up on our AR collection. So I automated all of that ahead of time, which I'm super proud of.
So smart.
And then I had my goals to fill up owner's pay for my own portion of, I'll be very blunt. I profit first. The way I pay myself as an owner is to pay myself my portion of rent for the place that we live. And so I have a goal to fill payroll first and then fill my rent second. And then we do our tax savings and things like that from there. And two, I wanted to clear our accounts payable. We had one more installment payment for our 2025 Moto America sponsor rider that we wanted to get cleared and out of the way. So that was one of the priorities to fill the bucket for while traveling as well too. And then I continued to use my plan to save for Allison's next payroll and taxes and our operating expenses and everything like that. So lesson really is just planning ahead of time. If you don't want to be worried about it in the moment, then you're going to have to project and budget and have a plan for things to do it behind the scenes while you're doing other stuff.
Well, and it probably didn't take too long to schedule the AR and to kind of like plan that kind of stuff out. It probably just took 20 minutes to schedule all that stuff out, which is,
I mean, that's
in grand scheme of things, it saved you a lot of time and a lot of headache and a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So
definitely worth it. And I think too, right, we sat down yesterday and had our own call and just talked through everything, all of the incoming AR for the next like 4 to 6 weeks and what we're set to receive from like our end of month retainer clients. We talked about whatever payables we still have left. And now we're talking about looking at paying down all of the credit card spending that we had incurred while traveling. So again, we pay it off before it starts to accrue interest. I honestly had absolutely no idea if we're in the positive or negative for April or so far in May. Honestly, I really don't care either. But, I do know the important thing is that I do know where our next month's worth of money is coming from and that it's going to cover the bills. And based on history and what liabilities we owe to keep the lights on, like we're going to be fine. So, even though I'm not tracking everything as detailed as I want to and as detailed as I historically have been, I still feel confident in our firm's position. So I think that's just a really good supporting fact of like having the right systems and having the right workflows in place really can help you through these like tougher times, I'd say.
yeah, and you were still working on clients, taking meetings, and I'm amazed that you were able to handle it so well and like prioritize your clients, with, and prioritize the clients and still enjoy the time with your family. Do you have any lessons learned or areas you would have handled, something differently next time?
Yeah, the amount of meetings that I still took on top of all of the travel is pretty wild and not something that I would like suggest. But we had a lot of clients doing a lot of really big transitional stuff that it just like all happened to like at the same time. I didn't really set a firm out of office or tell clients really the length that I would be traveling or like what my traveling actually was because most of that trip was still very much work related. And I did have periods where I was like stable for 4 or 5 days in a row. I do think that that's something I probably would handle a little bit differently next time. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I would like actually set some specific out of office time and like put an email blast out to
a couple
our clients.
days at least.
Yeah. But, clients knew ahead of time when I was traveling because they were trying to schedule meetings with me. And I'm like, they'd be like, can you meet this day? And I'm like, no, I'm traveling. Or can you get this done by this date? And it's like, can we do this day? Because I'm actually traveling these days. And so that was what I felt guilty about. And like, our clients are amazing. They're definitely understanding and they had no problems with it. But like, the entrepreneur guilt and the people pleaser guilt, right? Of just like not being exactly 100% as available as I usually am kind of got to me a little bit. And it was like mostly me driving in the car too. That was conflicting. It wasn't necessarily flying, which is funny because like I think of my dad and when he was an entrepreneur and he used to drive all the time and he would always be on his phone. That was like when cell phones like were like starting to become a thing. He was a salesman, but like really what's a bookkeeper doing in a car that's going to be helpful? Really? Like you can't show
Literally.
anything or anything like
Yeah.
that. But, I did still have to take a couple of client calls while I was in the car, but without like the computer there, it was like there was definitely follow-up. So then I start asking the questions like, was it really efficient for all of us, or would it have been more efficient to just like have that solid out of office where people knew like I'm not available at all this day? And two, like I had to continue to ask myself like, is it worth it to drive distracted? Which I firmly land at no every single time. So no work on the road. I'm sorry. I understand that it's hard for
No.
people, but like, no,
Definitely not a bookkeeper on the
no.
road.
But even just like working in hotels also kind of got tricky at times. Like, first of all, if you're a professional service company that provides remote services to clients and you do not have cyber insurance, like run and get it right now. Like that's one of my other tips for advice from this episode. But like obviously I didn't want to be logging in and out of client portals that had sensitive information on unsecure internet. So that's what kind of became a little bit tricky at times. But like luckily I was staying with family at a few points in this trip for like multiple days. So I did have access to fully secured internet, which I try to like compile those tasks on those days so I could get all those that work out of the way. But, for those in between hotel stays and like those client emergencies where I had to, like I would literally need to come off and like I would literally need to create the secure internet connection from my phone directly to like my laptop and use like my cell service as my internet for, those sensitive situations, I would say. So, and I also had to lean pretty heavily on you, Ali, right? Like I needed you to log into some of these secure portals and I needed you to jump in on some of the larger scope client tasks that were coming up that were bogging me down. So, like I also had to tell you tasks that I want to prioritize because they probably affected me on the bigger project later on down the road and whatnot. So
Definitely.
I did take a couple of days off completely for family all throughout, which I do not regret at all. Um, but I definitely, and too, like my nieces were in school during the daytime, so like I can hold like a relatively normal schedule for a lot of the trip, but for sure I could have and should have done a better job at like just turning off the laptop. And I think it's like hard. It's hard sometimes for entrepreneurs to take that step back because they don't like necessarily feel confident in their own workflows at times that the business will run itself on. And so I think I could have benefited from reminding myself that a few times here and there. But
I feel like though that is the hard thing about it being such a young business is you still got your piggies dipped in it so hard that
yeah.
it's hard to take them out and take a step back.
Well,
So
and two, to be fair and to give my own self grace, right? There was a lot of work. Like
there's a lot of stuff that came up for sure.
way more work.
More than a normal month.
Yeah, like
I feel like.
and like not even onboarding new clients either. Like
No.
it was so again, I'm giving myself grace. That's tip number 3 in this episode. Give yourself grace.
And now that you're back in the office, how have you scheduled out your next couple weeks? Like are you feeling better about the next couple weeks or is it still chaotic?
I'm still getting my booty kicked. I'm definitely still getting my booty kicked, but it's getting better and better and better each day, right? Doesn't help that I'm out of office tomorrow for a conference or that I have more travel that comes up at the end of the month, but I just have to keep reminding myself that it's okay and that like there's no reason to have shame around where everything is right now, right? The work will all get done. It just doesn't all have to get done right now. Just Right.
some of the work has to get done. Right. Right. I do need to sit down and catch up on receipts, though, and bank feeds. Even if I'm not reconciling all of our accounts and completing a full-blown month-end close, on receipts and bank feeds are still like an absolute must for me. Like, you should never let those get more than a month behind, in my opinion, regardless if you have a bookkeeper that's doing it for you or if you're DIYing it yourself. You really shouldn't let that stuff go for more than a month. And so, and my reasoning behind that is that you need to know the ins and outs of your money. Like, you need to know that, and how useful is information from 3 months ago to you if you're spending money now, kind of a thing. So that's the mindset I
Well,
like
and
to
if
keep
there's
mine
some
in.
sort of, I like to think of it too, like if there's fraud, and you don't catch it within a month
They're not going
or
to give it
something like
back.
that. Exactly. And with you traveling so much, stuff like that, it feels like it's a little more prevalent. So, yeah.
Exactly. So, I'm going to block up catch-up windows for myself this weekend to get caught up on everything, and to make it easy on myself, I'll probably do like 50% of it on Saturday and 50% of it on Sunday. But the important thing is that I actually have a task in our management system to like make me sit down and do it, essentially. I already have notes in my month-end tasks for next month to make sure that I review both April and May in detail, since I have chosen not to do a full-blown close for April this month. And I've mentioned it a couple times throughout this episode, but I rely heavily on a task management system to keep all the ducks in a row. And my system of preference is Asana. I'm not going to keep that in like the waiting.
Gatekeep
I'm
it.
not going to gatekeep that. There's plenty of other great task management programs out there. Everyone has their own preferences. I just prefer for my system to shoot me polar bears and unicorns and rainbows every so often when I complete tasks. Like, let's be for
It's
real.
glorious.
Like, and since I create so many tasks for everything, like literally I have a task in our management system to deep clean my office space, my desk, every single month. It's like the mystery
I
jelly
love that.
beans.
That's so smart.
I know, it's like mystery jelly beans. You never know when you're gonna get you never know when you're gonna get a surprise, and you don't know what your surprise is gonna be.
I love
I love
that.
it. And see, like, you build little things like that into mundane workflows, and it makes them bearable, in my opinion.
I love that.
But every task, anything that we need to do in our company, on our clients' work or on our own firm work, or even just to keep our workspaces clean, right? It all goes into Asana. It all gets assigned to either myself or Allison, and it all gets a date put onto it. And so it's easy for us to see on each day what's due for each client or for our firm. And so it's easy for us to just look at everything and go, this is a priority, this can go to next week. This is a priority, this needs to go to next week. All of these things can be hit at the same time. Or Allison's already doing 3/4 of this, I'm just going to have her do the last little piece of this project, and then I'll review it. But like, the task management program in general is like, it's one of the best things that you can do for a business. So you have everything in one place that facilitates all of the things that need to be done. And I'm also so very thankful for Hubdoc. Outside of the inconvenience that, specifically at the very least for iPhones, there's no Face ID authentication, and there's no way to like save your login credentials, and it logs me out of the app on my phone pretty frequently, and I have to literally type my long ass email address and my long ass very secure password into it every single time. It was the saving grace for this trip. So if the app was logged in, I just took a picture of every receipt as soon as I got it. As soon as the receipt hit my hand, a receipt went into Hubdoc. If I was logged out of Hubdoc and could not be bothered to sign into Hubdoc, then I took a picture of it on my phone, and Hubdoc lets me create a very specific email address where I can email my receipt to,
and then it lands in the same bank. And it's the same thing. If a receipt was coming through email, I would just forward it to the Hubdoc email address. So regardless if I was uploading the image directly through my Hubdoc app, if I took a photo of it on my phone and then sent it via email, or if it was an email that I forwarded, they all ended up in the same place for me. And literally the paper hit the hand, I take the image, I throw it away. I don't have like a stack of papers that I'm trying to manage when I come back to it. And so like that's how you set yourself up for success. Like I literally have not touched the bookkeeping in weeks, but the bookkeeping and all the receipts are there. And it'll be a nice little digital organizer. Like think of it like a digital filing cabinet, right? That's what it is essentially. And it's going to talk to our financial report system. So I'll push the receipt over from Hubdoc. It'll land in QuickBooks. It'll do the little matchy match on our bank feed. And then we've got everything in one place. And QuickBooks, our financial report system, where we use to get all of our numbers that we use to file our taxes. In all of those transactions, the receipts are attached. And like literally it's so painless. It takes seconds. And it was like honestly the saving grace for this trip, in my opinion.
Well, now you don't have to worry about, holding on to any receipts. You just snap the picture and you move on with your life, throw that receipt away, and stress-free, which is perfection. And we encourage you to check in with your own business. Do you have some tasks that are overdue? Can you automate those tasks? Is this something that maybe you need to hire professionals for? If you want to chat with us to get back on track or maybe lessen the mental load, please drop a comment or book a consultation with us. Visit www.cleanbeeconsulting.com/Full Throttle Finance. That's CLEANBEE consulting.com. And I think this is a great place for us to wrap things up, this shorter, sweet episode. If you found today's insights valuable, please like, share, comment, tag, all the things. We really appreciate it. We need your support for what we're doing here at Full Throttle Finance. And thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next Friday as we continue to break down finances with a motorsport twist.
See you next Friday.
See ya.